Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Mike Acton presentation as much as I did. Well, you know, eSports is one of the topics that we are insisting more this year. We had a wonderful presentation by Peter Moore yesterday. EA is one of the most influential companies in the game space, of course. But if there is another company, if there is a company that is pushing the eSports phenomenon around the world, this company is Activision Blizzard. Not only because it has some of the most successful games in the eSports space, but also because it's putting the building bricks to build what it's going to be the eSports. And it's showing the way, showing the path for many other games companies to transform from a games company to a media companies. Last year, I think it was September 2024, one day after Marty McFly got into the future, Activision Blizzard announced the acquisition of MLG, the biggest eSports league in the US. And since then, Mike Sepso, the founder of MLG, became the senior vice president of Activision Blizzard Media. Today, we have the enormous pleasure of having him here to show us a little bit how is the future of eSports. So please welcome to stage Mike Sepso.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. On behalf of Activision Blizzard and Major League Gaming, thanks for having me here. And over the next half hour, I'm going to introduce you to our world of esports. Let's start with a quick video.
Trying to find his skill and he gets it! Unbelievable, he wins the...
But no, Shadia brings it back, that's a 2-for-1 ops one, that's rolling down an ace, and one kill, and Flight will be here in a month's time, they were qualified.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MLG Major Championship. They may just be destined to win an extra velocity, winning their first major championship.
Okay, As you can see, eSports is competitive gaming as a spectator sport. But it's not just about the games. It's really about the players and their personalities and their storylines. Last October, Steve Bornstein, who was the CEO of ESPN and launched the NFL Network, he and I created the Media Networks division at Activision Blizzard. Later in the year, we acquired Major League Gaming in order to strengthen our leadership in the competitive gaming space. MLG's history, people, and technology platforms have become the pillars of how we're building our digital network. I know firsthand how MLG built its unmatched credibility and popularity because I helped start the company all the way back in 2002 to bring esports to the North American market. Over the past 12 years, MLG's built a community of global fans by producing and broadcasting over 100 live esports events around the world. We've live streamed premium content to millions of fans around the globe. In fact, we were live streaming esports before YouTube even existed and well before Twitch. We created MLG TV a few years ago, our own live broadcasting platform, in order to further distribute and improve the quality of our broadcasts globally. We've grown MLG from a startup to a global esports powerhouse that continues to shape esports culture. But we have a lot of problem with PowerPoint. Sorry, I think everyone's a little jet lagged today. Bear with us. And now, as part of Activision Blizzard with MLG, we have the capability to produce entertainment all over the world. We have the most games in esports and the most capability for production of live events, leagues, and broadcasts. Our world-class broadcasts reach tens of millions of viewers in the US and globally in multiple languages. Generally speaking, for our live events like the one that you saw in the video, we're broadcasting in 7 or 8 different languages around the world. And Activision Blizzard recognizes esports as the preferred entertainment platform for a new generation of millennials, but also as a very important emerging business for the video game industry at large. In just the past 12 months, we've seen people play our games for over 14 billion hours. And they've watched them for about 1.5 billion hours. That's just Activision Blizzard. With the Media Networks division, we're continuing to work with games from all publishers across the industry. Today, esports is exploding in popularity, and we're at a very unique moment in time. We have the capability to use a variety of tools in our endemic knowledge of the industry to further bring esports into the mainstream, and that's really our core mission as Media Networks. Last year, esports viewership reached over 220 million viewers, more than the NHL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball. And by 2017, esports is projected to have reached over 300 million viewers globally. These huge audience numbers mean mainstream, traditional sports-sized business opportunities for the industry. We've already seen esports tournaments broadcast on ESPN. We've had competition sanctioned as part of the X Games. We've seen Valve fill the Key Arena in Seattle for the Dota 2 International. And we're selling out events regionally all over the world. The audience is already there, and it's growing. And now our ability to sustain it starts with celebrating our players, leveraging our unique distribution capabilities, and helping organize the global esports ecosystem. It took the NBA and Premier League decades to grow from local clubs into the sophisticated and advanced ecosystems that they are today. The esports ecosystem will eventually look like these established leagues. One key difference is that we own the content and we can distribute it directly to our audience through live event viewers like the ones that we've developed inside of Black Ops 3. Through our MLG TV platform, or through third-party players like Twitch or Facebook with their new live player. It's a different world than the pay cable and satellite business that traditional sports grew through. Because our audience is used to consuming content digitally, wherever they are and on whatever device they want. What we can borrow from traditional sports is the organization of global governing bodies, leagues, and organized competitions, and the franchises that help build the personalities and players on these teams. With Activision Blizzard's acquisition of MLG, our combined strengths make us the most vertically integrated esport on the planet, and most capable to serve across all of those functions. We have the world's most popular games, we organize competitions, and produce the most memorable content. Year after year, MLG has grown its engaged fan base thanks to the consistent quality of our broadcast content. Activision Blizzard is now among the world's largest digital networks. We have over 500 million monthly active users across our games. That's a bigger digital network than Snapchat or Twitter. And we plan to tap into that network of audience to broaden the mainstream awareness of esports. Call of Duty, it's consistently the #1 game in the world, with a community of more than 100 million players. And through our collaboration with MLG, we can now broadcast pro matches directly into the game using the live event viewer in Black Ops 3. Call of Duty is very central to our strategy. MLG has worked with Activision prior to the acquisition since 2009 to build the Call of Duty esports community and grow a really passionate fan base around it. Call of Duty also has staying power. It's the #1 console esports game in the world, and it's remained the top seller in the industry for 7 consecutive years. There have been more than 10 billion views of Call of Duty content through digital networks. So we're going to expand esports by investing deeply in the Call of Duty World League. We're also going to introduce an aggressive content strategy around this league to broaden its audience. We've got the experience and the resources to create the next powerhouse esports league. And we'll also, in the CWL, will draw new fans into esports through competition and compelling premium content. Our programming strategy will bring players and personalities to the forefront as we celebrate this community. And we know how to turn players into celebrities. In sharing the rise of teams and individual players, we've become the defining storyteller for esports culture. Take a look at this story from the MLG Anaheim Open, which took place just a few weeks ago.
There's one, needs a clutch on 2, and Luminosity has done it behind a mind-blowing performance from Study.
One of the greatest Call of Duty esports performances from an individual player happened Friday night at MLG Anaheim. Coming off a tough loss against Team Elevate, Study from Team Luminosity came out the gates firing. Study goes 53 kills in Game 1, a record-breaking performance in Hardpoint throughout this year on Black Ops 3, but unfortunately took a tough loss. FaZe made a miraculous comeback and were able to go 1-0 up in the series.
Did not FaZe win? Oh my God, what a comeback from FaZe!
Game 2, Study comes out the gates 9-6 in Search and Destroy, again for the loss though. Unfortunately, his teammates underperforming a little bit. Going into Game 3, about to be eliminated from groups potentially with an 0-2 finish. Study sits down, says to his teammates, hey guys, relax. Let's play for fun. Let's play how we normally play. Guess what happens? They win Game 3. Going into Game 4, the CTF, Study 7-1 at the half after a rough stalemate, and all of a sudden erupts in the second half, finishing 26-7. You could feel the shift in momentum in the arena, the crowd starting to get behind Study in this miraculous performance.
We are going to a Game 5, and I'll tell you what, that's the man right there, baby.
Game 5, it was all about Study once again. Felt like he was firing rockets from his sniper rifle. Finishes 14-2, an unbelievable performance from him. The reverse sweep on FaZe as well, potentially solidifies this as the greatest performance in Call of Duty esports.
Study is the best in the world right now.
At MLG, we live and breathe esports, and we thrive in this community because we understand its nuances. We've been a part of it for almost 14 years. And we understand the power of social networks and its importance to this audience. We connect a community of gamers and content creators across all of these social platforms. And as of today, we distribute our content across every major social channel. We recently debuted our partnership with Facebook Live at the event that you just saw, the Call of Duty World League event in Anaheim. social platforms, our partners, recognize the impact of esports, and they recognize that we are the way to connect with that audience. They're eager to add our compelling content to their networks and build these communities. Partnering with Steve Bornstein, a real media legend who helped shape the way that the globe watches sports, we intend to utilize our combined expertise to become the center of esports, of the esports world for fans and players alike. And one of our new programming initiatives is ESR, the Esports Report. This is a massive franchise, like the programming that Steve created at ESPN, franchises like SportsCenter. ESR will encompass multiple programs that become individual franchises in their own right. And this new programming initiative is our biggest to launch to date. I want to show you a sneak preview of the kind of content we're talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another MLG Top 5 Spawn Series. Over in Chicago to go out to the West Coast.
This is what I thought he actually went for the wall make.
Ladies and gentlemen, some breaking news. What did I miss?
Velocity winning their first major championship.
Cloud9 have realised it's not going to come easy anymore. People are gunning for the title at #1 in NA.
I'm coming to you live from our analyst desk.
Great upsets in Counter-Strike history. It was also the best game of the tournament.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ESR.
To a brand new video. This time we're going to
Really
play the guy to watch the entire weekend.
So our goal with this kind of content is to reach a more mainstream viewer. But once we do, we also recognize the need to tailor the broadcasts to an audience that's just starting to watch esports for the first time. And watching esports is not a traditional linear experience like traditional sports. It deserves a more interactive and engaging viewing experience. We are able to supplement our live programming with a set of smart algorithms and some innovative design that drives real-time analytics and insights to create a more interactive environment for our fans and drive the storyline forward in a way that's never been done before. We call this new system EVE, our enhanced viewing experience. Using EVE to celebrate our players is a core component to raising mainstream awareness, but it can't be done effectively with the fractured ecosystem in esports that exists today. EVE will offer real-time stats and insights about the players in match in an HD video stream right in the middle. As you can see on the right are leaderboards and insights along the bottom that are going to push the storyline forward, but they're really putting the players front and center. And this is all happening in real time, live through our software that's pulling a real-time feed of information out of the game as it's happening and using a broad set of historical data to create new analytics. Whether somebody's tuning into the NBA Finals to watch Steph Curry for the first time play against LeBron, or people are watching Messi and Ronaldo, the actual games themselves are kind of footnotes to the real storyline, the drama of sport, and personality-driven storylines. EVE gives us the opportunity to put more data on the screen, and it allows our broadcasters to focus on telling the storylines of the players that are playing in the game. If you think about it, one of the things that's really missing from most esports content is when you're watching the game live, you're not seeing any of the people, you're really just seeing the gameplay. So our focus is, how do we bring the faces, the people that are actually playing, to the forefront and really celebrate them? EVE gives us an interesting way to do that because it takes some of the pressure off of the broadcasters and delivering a lot of information about what's going on in the game. So with esports, we have these personalities, and the nature of our audience and players allows us the mechanism to build stars naturally and authentically in a way that traditional sports didn't really have at its infancy. These guys have really amazing stories to tell. I want to show you a quick story that we produced that really connected with our fan base. It follows a Counter-Strike team, Luminosity, from Brazil to our World Championships in April. Please meet Team Luminosity.
Luminosity is a team that essentially is like the brainchild of one person. It's this guy, Fallen.
Fallen basically is the godfather of Brazilian CS.
He's someone who used to be a star player, and then because he saw there's not a lot of talent around me, and we don't have like a tactical aspect of the game, he actually dedicated himself to learning to be an in-game leader, which is a totally different role.
He kind of actively scouted all of the players in the team. He built this band of brothers, and when it wasn't working, when Luminosity were kind of getting close to finals but falling just short, he made a very difficult decision to bring in new players.
Gonna hit the ground there, it's Cold. Oh, what? A jumping double from Cold! What is going on right now? How does he do this?
Well, I think every single roster change we did had a reason. We had been amazing after tackling FNX and the team, and we had a very good performance, better performance after Cold Zero joined us as well.
Cold Zero, what a find. This is a player that had been sort of talked about a lot before he made the move to Luminosity, but I don't think anyone was particularly sold on just how good he was going to be.
He brings us the most crazy firepower we have in the team. Like, Cold Zero is insane. He's like a soldier. You send him to the war and he comes back like a hero. FNX brings a lot of experience. He's a guy that takes a lot of initiative, so it's good to have someone who takes his own choice in game.
To be good takes dedication. What FNX has is extraordinary.
I mean, Luminosity continues to lead the way in terms of strategy, so it's very unique because the best in-game leaders in the world in Counter-Strike have, throughout all of history, been from Europe. The idea that a South American guy could actually be the best tactician in the whole world is actually like revolutionary in itself.
The fact that he is this kind of courageous and bold character when it comes to expressing his opinion, that passes over to his tactics. He watches demos all day, he breaks down all the teams, and then he says, do you know what, why don't we not just anti-strat them, why don't we try and innovate, why don't we try and do something new?
I want this team to be remembered as not only getting there, it's how we got there. Everyone said we couldn't do it, everyone said we didn't have the talent. And we did it way different than everyone else in the world. That's how I want us to be remembered.
Winning this major would be everything we have ever worked for. We have been working so hard to get there, and I think it's going to be worthwhile for us, for everything we have done. We're going to be a dream coming true for us.
So this team came from Brazil to the US without any major sponsors or financial backing, and they won the championship. It was a huge story. Our fans really connected with it, and these are the kind of stories. Sorry, I think I keep stepping on the wire. Sorry about that. These are the kind of stories that fans will connect with globally. All right. These guys are now well on their way to becoming global celebrities too. They've continued their winning power throughout the CSGO season across the US and Europe. And part of building this fan base, the Team Luminosity, but really all major esports pro players, is that they have a level of transparency that doesn't really exist in mainstream sports. Players are sharing their candid, everyday moments with their fans across social media, whether it's through Twitter and Twitch or YouTube and Snapchat. They have a level of transparency and connection with their fans that's unrivaled with mainstream sports. And the fans are engaged constantly through social media, broadcast streaming, mobile apps, and experiences that keep the ecosystem tightly connected and available to fans globally, wherever they are and however they want to consume the content. This is going to help us create one of the world's first truly global sports phenomenons. And Luminosity is just one of hundreds of great stories in the esports world. We're going to continue to showcase these guys as celebrities and build them up to the level of mainstream sports. If you're thinking that esports stars are not as big as traditional sports athletes, I would say you're right. With a millennial audience, in some cases, they're even much bigger influencers. So we have tremendous advantages working for us, but there's still a lot of work ahead to capture new audiences and drive esports into mainstream culture. I'll be the first one to point out that esports does differ from traditional sports in a major way. The NFL, for instance, draws the same audience on Monday nights and Thursday night broadcasts in the US. But esports encompasses a variety of competitive games that attract different viewership every day. And every game can serve as the foundation for a variety of different programming. However, that variety can also cause viewers to see esports as fractured or disorganized, and it makes it really intimidating to get into the sport at all.
So for us to capture the attention of the mainstream audience that doesn't have hours every day to kind of parse through different Twitch streams or YouTube streams or find schedules for their favorite games or players, we need to kind of solve for that problem. And our vision for it, for the future of esports, is to develop the premier premium broadcast network for the entire industry and for the fan base around the world. One that helps shape the future of sanctioning and allows for the development of star personalities and builds true value among long-standing franchises for fans, for advertisers, and for owners. And with that, I'd like to show you just one more video, which was the introduction to the final competition where Team Luminosity won. There we go.
Looking to take this all the way home, but not without a serious fight.
This is a major. This is $1 million major.
Navi are one map away from returning to back-to-back majors.
But that's it, Luminosity with a comeback from 15-10.
I have no idea how they pulled that off.
This is really good for Navi.
What a jumping double from Cold!
This might be done.
How does he do this? That was something I'm never going to see ever again.
Navi are in the grand final, the second straight time.
And Luminosity will find themselves in the grand finals against Navi.
That's going to do it for today's show. I'm Chris Puckett, and on behalf of everyone at Activision Blizzard Media Networks, Major League Gaming, and MLG.TV, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
Happy to answer any questions you have now. Questions? Sure. Yeah, talk. I'll repeat it for you.
Thanks a lot for your presentation.
Sure.
And I have two questions for you. First one, for a new online game publisher, what would you say is the best strategy to get his games or its games into the eSports ecosystem? And second question is, do you think there is more room for more leagues, like on top of the ones that are already up, and more players into all this ecosystem?
Yeah, so the first question was for new online games, what's the best strategy for getting into esports? Yep. Sure. Yeah, I think for new online games, the important thing is to engage an audience with online competition quickly. Whether it's a huge game like Counter-Strike that's got a big esports following, or like Call of Duty, the important thing is to build a big talent base and a feeder system. And so, for instance, with MLG, we developed a site called Game Battles, which has 10 million players playing in over 60 different games and tournaments all the time. So that's kind of key to build a community around it through competition online. And once that talent base starts to bubble up, you can move into regional events and eventually a full league system. And I think the second question was, is there room in esports for more games to become big leagues? And
More leagues, some of the ESL.
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's still very, very early days for esports. So MLG and ESL have kind of occupied the North American and European market. There are a number of leagues in China and all across Asia. There's KESPA in South Korea, which really helped start the entire system. But then, the publishers are now, with Activision Blizzard and EA, are kind of creating our own leagues around our own games at this point. So I think given how big the gaming audience is, or the gaming user base is globally, I think participation in competition is going to continue to grow. And as we start to create more accessible types of content, like some of the stuff that I've shown, and get people more engaged as fans, I think the fan base can be even bigger than the player base. And so I do think that there's room for a number of different leagues. And I don't think anybody's really perfected the model for esports leagues yet. And there likely will be a few that are successful for different kinds of games. So I think there's a lot of room yet. I think it's still very early. Even though I've been in the space for 14 years, it's still very early in terms of sports.
So with the expansion, with the expansion of esports to the West, and with the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, with the acquisition of MLG by Activision Blizzard, I guess you're trying to gain some in-house expertise in developing new leagues.
Yep.
But as I said, with the expansion to the West of esports, we've seen decreasing specific weight of StarCraft. So I wanted to ask about your plans to re-establish StarCraft 2 in the West.
We don't have anything specific to announce today about StarCraft, but obviously we're all big fans of it. And I think the important thing about StarCraft is it's really the origin of esports in many ways. As a franchise, it's the first game that really fans took on and built into a real esports and created a whole culture around it. And at MLG, even many years prior to the acquisition, we had a long history of working with Blizzard to bring StarCraft esports to the US. We were some of the first people to get players visas and treat them as athletes to bring Korean players into the US to play. And we started to develop a very big system for StarCraft 2. So, I think since then, a lot of new games have come to the forefront, and there's just a lot of choices for players and for fans. But yet, certainly, StarCraft has not gone from esports. It will certainly continue to build.
More questions?
Anything else? There's one over here.
So I guess the thing that has to happen for esports is really the games have to last a much longer time than they do. So how do you deal with that sort of challenge, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So the games have to be have staying power, and they have to remain. There has to be some consistency. You can't constantly change. So I think you see that in a game like Counter-Strike, right, which has become an enormous esport game because it's been out for so long. StarCraft, very similar. We think Call of Duty, although the game is somewhat new every year, the esports components of it will become more and more consistent as the game grows. And it's such a big franchise and such a mainstream franchise that we really think we can invest in the game, the esports component of the game, and build a really big fan base that way. But yeah, I think publishers are starting to realize more and more that games need to have lasting staying power, and they need to be somewhat more consistent in terms of mechanics in order to really develop a big esports community.
Yes, I have a question more about the way it was apparent from your video. The commentary was very shallow, very quick burst because of the way and style of Call of Duty's play. Have you thought of looking at games that are more cerebral in the fact that, like for example, football, you have quite a build-up to a goal, and the commentators can explain how they're passing, and then the strategy is very visible.
Sure.
That's less apparent with Call of Duty. Have you thought about that for the longer term?
Yeah, I think there's different fan bases or feel differently about different sports. Right? I think that's true of football. I think basketball, for instance, is very different. There's a lot of scoring and a lot of quick action. So I think what we've tried to do with EVE, and the reason I I showed that today, is we invest a lot of time in the technology and design, but also the sort of esports technical understanding of the game. So we developed that EVE system on an individual game-by-game basis, really to bring out, with a game like Call of Duty, for instance, we do focus a lot more on, while the broadcast is very rapid fire because the game's so quick, we spend a lot of time kind of developing a broader storyline with EVE. So we're putting up live insights and telling you backstories of the players and giving the audience an understanding of what's happening. Even though the action's very quick, at the end of the day, the match can still take 5 to 15 minutes. So that's an important part of it. But it's different for different games. I think a game like StarCraft is a much slower build to a final, big crescendo at the end. So it's really incumbent upon us as the media platform to perfect the broadcast on a game-by-game basis and really cue into. I think the really interesting thing for me that's always been about esports is it's not just, it's just not another sport like football, basketball, baseball, cricket. It kind of has elements of every one of those different sports depending on the game you're playing inside of esports. So there's a big, wide, white canvas for us to work with.
Okay, sorry, can I just do a follow-up?
Sure.
Because I think what I was really fishing for, is whether you were feeding back into the game design of the game you're playing. So Call of Duty, for example, there are some things, like the multiple kill counts earning you perks that feed into the play of the game.
Yeah.
Whether you're actually asking for other things like that increase the richness of the team play.
So that's the nice part of being part of Activision Blizzard now, is we are working directly with the studios, 2 to 3 years out from game releases on, basically just what we internally call watchability. Yeah. So what is it that we need to do with the game to make the spectator experience better? And how does it impact the actual studio's development cycle? So that's a huge component of what we're doing and how we as MLG and media networks are working with the studios at Activision and Blizzard, and frankly with other studios outside of our network as well.
Okay, thanks.
More questions?
Is there any other question with that? I have one.
Okay.
Well, in every sport, apart from the major leagues, if you talk about basketball, obviously everyone wants to play in the NBA and want to be an NBA star, for instance. But there are many people playing, millions of people playing around the world, and there are other leagues. In eSports, it happens the same. What is the future for those regional, local leagues that are rising everywhere? How they will be integrated in the
So I think it's interesting because those kind of local and regional and I guess amateur level leagues did develop organically at the start of esports. And just in the past couple of years, as game publishers in the industry started to embrace esports as an important marketing channel to drive game engagement and sales, they tended to go, sort of game publisher marketing teams kind of embracing esports. And so they tended to go right to the pro level. And so when a new game would come out, they just develop a pro league and they launch that. The important thing about building any sport is kind of what I was saying in the first question. You have to develop a very wide base of talent development in order to have a professional league and have any staying power. So, for instance, that's what we've done with Game Battles, where we have over 10 million registered users around the world, primarily in the US and Europe, but big audience of people who are active participants and playing a lot of different games competitively. And we think, the really interesting thing about gaming versus traditional sport is it can happen online and it can happen globally, and we can start to organize those systems appropriately. One of the things that we did a few years ago with Game Battles is we created a sanctioning system and a ranking system that traverses down to the lowest level amateur all the way up to the pro level. So with the Call of Duty World League, for instance, if you're playing through Game Battles competitions online on weekends, you're earning the same ranking points that the pros are earning for playing in the big competitions. You may not win as many, but we're sanctioning that individual online event as part of the larger system. And so I think those expansive sanctioning systems are also really important to driving continuity and aspiration, really. I think that's an important part of it. So we're going to continue to kind of, and we talk a lot about sanctioning and organization systems and organizing the ecosystem, and I think a lot of people think of that as an academic exercise, but it's critical to exactly what you're talking about. How does some young kid feel like he's part of a larger system, not just playing a game for fun? I think that's critical. It's important for sport. When you go from playing, as a kid, I played basketball in my driveway with my friends in the neighborhood, but when I went to an organized team, things got much different. There was coaching, there was management, even at a very young age. And I think that's part of what's missing a little bit in the development of esports that we really need to build. It's a great question.
Anyone else? Can I make a second one?
Hey, it's your show. You can do whatever.
It looks like the main revenue or source for eSports right now is focused on advertisement.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, but I being in interactive media, I think it can have much more potential for making business out of the advertising model. In 10 years from now, how do you envision that? What would be like the main revenue stream for eSports?
I think currently we're in an audience growth phase, so we want to make sure that the content and viewing experiences are as available as possible. Meaning, advertising is a great business model because it allows us to passively pay for the broadcast without having the consumer have to pay. I do think down the road, as we develop new and more interesting interactive tools like Eve, it comes with the potential to build in new, pay-per-view or pay-per-experience kind of models on top of it. And I think the other thing is, we're a separate media business inside of Activision Blizzard. There's 5 companies, so we're not the ones developing or publishing the games, but we are driving additional revenue through microtransactions and things like that back into the core business. So I think if you look at the whole spread or breadth of different revenue streams that we can create, there are all the traditional sport revenue streams like sponsorship and advertising and merchandising and licensing and all of those things that we're starting to exploit. And I think eventually we'll also have some digitally native model of paid consumer experiences.
So how do you, now that you're inside a league inside of Activision, how do you look at the other leagues that are out there then that are sort of cross-publisher events, that are doing games from different kinds of companies in particular events or regions?
Yeah, so I think because MLG and ESL, for instance, have always called themselves leagues, although in most cases, both companies are really kind of producing things on behalf of publishers. I think publishers are now getting more directly involved in figuring out how do they become the sort of sanctioning body for their games league. That's certainly what we're doing inside of Activision Blizzard, is helping the franchise owners figure out how do they structure that, because it's important that it's not totally separate from the game. Otherwise, you kind of lose the interaction of the league in the game itself. But again, like I said earlier, there's going to be different models. There's different models in sport. Right now, Wimbledon is happening, which is very different from the Premier League or the NBA. And I think all those different models are applicable to esports, and it's dependent on the game and the audience and kind of where it's most popular. Yeah.
I understand that you're building a media network based on Activision Blizzard games, primarily. But once again, looking at the future, when you're building this awesome network that you're building, is there will we see other games from other publishers integrated and getting advantage?
No, absolutely. And in fact, a lot of the video that I just showed was an MLG Counter-Strike competition. So clearly not one of our games. In fact, you could argue that it's competitive with Overwatch or even Call of Duty. But our mandate inside of Activision Blizzard is to try to work with the entire industry. We really don't see our business as competitive. We see it as additive, and hopefully we'll even work with EA one day. But no, I think the other thing is esports still is in very early days. So it's not like the traditional business where everyone's kind of fighting over market share in genres. It's still, the audience is expanding so quickly. I think it's just incumbent on all of the major players in the space to try to work towards regularity and familiarity to broaden the audience and make it more accessible to a more mainstream audience globally.
Thank you. Any more questions?
So you just mentioned Overwatch, which just received the ranked system. But in terms of competitive play, it seems that the spectator is still some steps behind. What should we expect for future in competitive Overwatch play?
I'm not going to make any announcements on behalf of Blizzard today, but I think it's obvious, how focused the team was on developing Overwatch really as a core esport game. And I think, it's visually just stunning to watch, not just play already. And as I mentioned before, kind of across all of the Activision Blizzard studios, watchability for esports is a really important kind of core competency that's continuing to be developed. So. The game's amazing. It's already got a massive engaged audience playing competitively, and I think it's just going to continue to get better.
That's it. No more questions?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a question.
You talk about making a big talent base, consistency in the games. If you have one of that, or both of one, for example, like Counter-Strike have both, and Overwatch has a huge amount of talent base right now, just without a month out in the market. Right. For an indie developer, for some of us, how would you approach to achieve one of these, having a big talent base, how to promote having great players in your games?
Sure. Well, selfishly, we would like all of the indie studios who are developing interesting competitive games to work with us on game battles. I mean, we can plug directly into the games and give you access to 10 million active users really immediately who are all, interested in playing new games. So obviously there's other competitors to game battles out there, other online tournament systems. We think we've developed the broadest one and the one that's been in market for close to a decade now, which is why it has such a big user base. But I think that's really important, is being able to plug into an online competition platform that has an existing player base, that's shown a capability to develop communities around games. And we've developed a formula at MLG over more than a decade of using that online tournament system to develop a big player base, moving into regional competitions that are live, increasing the level of coverage we do with our franchises like ESR as a game starts to get traction and a bigger fan base, and then building the whole system into something bigger and newer. And we're going to continue to do that even though we're a part of Activision Blizzard now. So we're continuing, like I said, to work with lots of other games. And I think the indie game development world is a very exciting place for us, and we think we can find the next Counter-Strike or the next Call of Duty in that world. So we'd be happy to work with you.
So a short advice, a tip for how you can also get engagement to the players, so the players are engaged with your games, which you think is one important thing. To get, you have players that get a lot of engagement. So if you have to say a tip about engage the players, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I think you have to get the game in front of people through a network like a Game Battles and then curate the competitions. I think a lot of the newer online tournament systems are kind of user-generated tournaments where the community is creating tournaments and like that. We think that's interesting, but we've always found that when a league like MLG is sanctioning and creating tournaments, that it gets a deeper level of player engagement because the players feel like it's going somewhere. It has a broader context than just something created by the community itself.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Oh.
So, yes, about the game battles, what is your, I mean, how is it, how strong is it right now in Europe? And how hard is for a new game to make some room in Europe for a new online game in game battles among your community?
About 30% of the users the active users are in Europe right now. One of the major initiatives we're doing with game battles, because we are now part of Activision Blizzard, is actually building game battles directly into the games. And I think that will massively expand the audience of players, which will help as we add other games to the system. So we have the capability, again, to immediately market new games on the Game Battles platform to 10 million players who are active competitive players across North America and Europe. I think that's the key differentiator that we've got.
So these 3 million players, is this 30% of these 10 million in euro or whatever is the number? How quick do they adapt to new games? So are they early adopters? Yeah,
so I think within genres, they adapt pretty quickly. There's always a propensity to try to play new games because, if you're the 10,000th best player, you're probably not going to make it into the pro league. So if a new game comes out and it's got some traction, and you want to get good at it quickly because maybe you can be on top of that game. So we've seen people jump pretty quickly and try to and engage very deeply with new games as they come out and we launch them on the platform.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess those were a lot of questions. Thank you very much, Mike, for being with us today and for answering all the questions. And hope to see you soon. Good luck with your new venture.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, everybody.